My name is Tim Iverson, and I'm happy to be here at our Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully conference. I guess this is the second one. I was not here last year, so very excited to be here today. So I thought we'd just set an intention real quick for this short workshop. I originally had planned for 2-3 hours. That got changed, so we're going to condense things, and I'm going to try not to rush, because like a lot of good classroom teachers, we have way too much material, and we try to go real fast. So I'm going to try to slow down, but I still might go really fast. So figure that out. Okay. So I'll talk a little bit more about myself in a minute, but I'd like to start with some practice. But before we get to that, I mentioned an intention. I was thinking about that this morning, and two things came to mind. Just to have some fun. I was a middle school teacher for 30 years, and you know, we just had a lot of fun. And if you don't build some fun into your work, it may not go as far as you'd like. So we're going to have some fun today. And I'd also like us to do this workshop. We're going to create it together. I'm not a great stand-by a slide, PowerPoint, lots of graphs and data. As a classroom teacher, I always kept my presentations fairly short, and then we did stuff, and we created things together. So unlike some subject areas where there's an emphasis on right or wrong answers, in my area, which was art and humanities, there was infinite possibilities in every topic and every subject, and that was really exciting for me. So I will have a couple slides for you. I will talk at you a little bit, but then we're going to create together. Okay, we're going to practice together. So, so we had two topics today: deep looking, mindful listening, and we're going to probably emphasize the deep looking, and then we're going to just build in the mindful listening. Mindful listening is what you are doing right now, hopefully. Bring that attention back if you're thinking about lunch or maybe shopping later in the day or whatever you've got planned. But deep looking, I was an art and humanities teacher, so I spent 30 years teaching, hopefully teaching other kids about how to see more, how to sense more. But we talked a lot about paying attention and listening, which is another skill that needs to be developed in young people and adults. Okay, so let's take a minute or two to just listen. You can get yourself comfortable in your chair if you want to put down your pen or pencil. Let your shoulders relax. You can take a breath or two if that will help you get settled. And just notice that sounds are happening. They were always happening. We just may not have noticed. You may notice sounds that are far away, sounds that are closer. Maybe sounds that you can recognize. And the cardinal rule, if there is a rule in mindfulness, is to just come back without judging to your focus and start over. Noticing sounds. It doesn't take any effort other than just to remember. And we'll open our eyes. Thank you. Sound is always happening. All right. I thought we'd take a minute or two to introduce ourselves, maybe to the people next to you. I've gone to many mindfulness conferences over the years, and the real treat to me was to meet people face to face. And to meet people, talk to people. So here's what I thought we could do. If you want to just talk to the person next to you, if it makes sense to add a third person, that's absolutely fine. 2 questions. you can think for a moment, what brought you here today? Now, if you want to mention what kind of vehicle you brought, that's fine, but I meant a little more metaphorically. Why are you taking this weekend to be here when you could be at home taking care of chores, right? Kids, maybe? And what about your interest in mindfulness? Is this new for you? Has this been a long-standing thing for you? But let's take a few moments, and I'm going to emphasize, maybe you can decide, let's say you two are partners, and it's Jen is maybe going to talk first, and then your name?
Susan.
Susan. Just be an excellent listener. Really give that person your full attention. I used to use the metaphor of an empty cup. Just be an empty cup or bowl for that person just for a few moments, okay? So when you feel comfortable, go ahead and start, and we'll just find out who's here.
Hi.
I used to be. I'll go.
Oh, thank you.
I'm being totally honest. My boss's wife.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
There you go.
Right there.
There you go.
I'm a high school
I came last year. I liked it a lot. I'm a health teacher.
So you're, I mean, my husband's wife.
The place we usually go.
This helps.
This is something different. I like a lot. So my interest in mindfulness, again, being totally honest, it's not easy for me. I can't stop.
Well, you started here. Wonderful.
Making some progress and things.
Different than.
Happy, just stop, especially for noticing and stuff. And then with a 13 and a 12-year-old being a high school teacher, it's definitely a need for it.
Yeah.
It's hard for doing something.
I teach kindergarten and Patty. Brought her here today. I've been practicing mindfulness. Personally, I've had a regular practice for probably 5 years. Introduced to mindfulness as a young child. My mom was she loved yoga and she called it mindfulness. Breathing exercise and meditation type, I do that now as I've grown.
Pardon the interruption. If you haven't switched partners, I might just encourage you to do that.
Just as I've grown as an individual and as an educator, I've seen how I brought mindfulness back into my life. And so when I reintroduce a formal practice into my day, I wanted to bring it to children. The children are this way. And so I've been doing some school classes. I bring it into my classroom. There's a summer program that I did last summer. And I love Cosm. This is my second year here. And right now I'm helping to co-facilitate the Chicago chapter.
Well, I'm Skyler. I teach in Wisconsin, middle and high school students at a public charter school that is outdoor learning, project-based school, and questions backwards. I also personally teaching myself for 5 or 6 years. Originally kind of as like desperation to try to deal with my own anxiety. And after a couple of years, I somehow came across mindful schools and had this realization that, oh, this is something I could also use at school. And it's just been really powerful in the classroom. I couldn't come last night for the schedule. It's just down the road.
Okay.
That was great.
All right, thank you. You now have been friends.
Yeah.
Okay, just a little bit about myself. I gave a presentation a couple years ago, and the person said, one of the people said, "I loved it. You didn't say one thing about yourself." So I will say a couple things about myself. My name is Tim Iverson, and I am from Minnesota. I'm from the Twin Cities. I think I mentioned Twin Cities?
Yeah.
Where?
I graduated in Johnson.
Nice. And I taught art and humanities, as I said, for about 30 years. My home base area is art, also some art history. This is some of my work. I'm primarily a figure drawer and painter, but I also do some non-objective things for fun, just for a different spirit, to loosen up a little bit. This is a picture of my father. That he passed away about 24 years ago, and a wonderful veteran of World War II. We spent a lot of hours together in person talking and just being present in a little different way. And so that's a little bit of my personal work. Some more examples of my work. I am retired, just retired this spring, so I have a little more time, unlike some of you folks, I have a little more time to pursue the things I'm most passionate about. So when I'm not working on mindfulness projects or like this book we just put out, this is some of my portrait work. When I was a teacher, I would often take a few moments to do a quick sketch of my students. That was one way to get their attention. If nothing else, I could pull a student up front. Okay, you were going to draw, and then the whole class, everybody stopped. So I love dogs, pets. If you talk to me later today, you better be ready, because within 5 minutes we'll be talking about pets or dogs. This is a portrait of my Aunt Lila. I did that for her 90th birthday. This was her best friend who passed away recently, and she asked me to put that in her portrait. So art has been, before I formally entered into mindfulness, art was sort of my way of being mindful of the present moment. And even in college, when I was undergoing lots of stresses and strains, art was my way of connecting to the present moment and getting out of that story stream. And I couldn't really understand it at the time, but that's what it did for me. Oh, that is my dog. He sneaks into every presentation I do. I'm sorry. This weekend when I'm in Chicago, I am so habituated to walking and feeding that at some point I may walk out the door just out of habit, just to get him some food or water. So I'm sorry. That is my dog look.
Hi, Lucky.
Thank you. This is a question I ask every group. Right? Now, 10 years ago when I first started talking about mindfulness, there would have been some blank expression, blank stares. But does anybody want to share how they understand mindfulness? Because that's kind of what this conference is about. Anybody want to just throw out a definition? Yeah.
I'll do it. Yeah. To be present in the moment, observationally, without judging what you're observing.
Nice. Very nice. Anybody want to add to that? That is, that's a definition that, like a lot of things becomes after a while, we hear it so much that it almost becomes trite or cliche. But it is, when you really stop and remind yourself what that means, it's pretty radical to be in the present moment. It's actually quite a radical thing. And to not judge, to do things without judging, is quite radical. Okay, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Before I talk about this, one of the definitions of mindfulness I also like is mindfulness as remembering. If you know a little bit about the origins of that word, mindfulness comes from the ancient Indian language Pali. I believe the word is sati, S-A-T-I, and it really means remembering or recollecting. And if you're an educator, parent, human being, you are constantly remembering what it is you're supposed to be doing. What your values are, what your principles are, what your ethics are. And when we forget those things, that's when we get into some trouble. My daughter, bless her soul, drove me to the airport yesterday. I thought I was going to be hurt. Looking at the phone, picking up the phone, scrolling. I said, please put the phone down. I want to get to the airport alive. And I say that only half joking. She forgot her primary objective was to get to the airport alive. We all forget that, right? We're all, and maybe you see people on television, on the news that forget their ethics, they forget their print, they forget their values. So mindfulness to me is a very broad thing, and it really does have to do with remembering. Now, if you want to bring it down to our practice Remembering that you are breathing. Remembering that you are alive. Remembering that you've got sensations happening in your feet right now. You can check it anytime you want. Remembering there is an outside world. External mindfulness. When you think of mindfulness in popular culture, it's usually, I bet you have an image in your mind, person sitting on a beach looking at a sunset, in a lotus position, focusing on their breath. That's awesome, but that's only one aspect of mindfulness, in my opinion. Mindfulness is also being aware of what's happening around you as well as within you. And it's that balance. If you are driving away this weekend, you need to be aware of what's happening around you, right? I mean, when my son started to learn to drive a few years ago, he said to me, "Oh my gosh, Dad, I couldn't believe how many things I had to pay attention to on the road, the signs." That, you know, he was used to being in that computer, and all of a sudden his attention had to be everywhere. And that's a matter of life and death, really. Okay? So when I talk about external mindfulness, the cultivating of our senses, and many of you all, I'm sure, do this in your mindfulness practice with your students or with yourself. External, we'll talk more about this in a minute. This is a quote I shared with my art students for many years. They had to copy it in their journal. If you would be so inclined to copy this down, you can do that. This quote's attributed to Leonardo da Vinci. He says, "The artist sees what others only catch a glimpse of." The artist sees what others only catch a glimpse of. To me, that is the perfect definition of mindfulness from an art lens. That's all we do with mindfulness. We're just seeing more, we're hearing a little more, we're sensing a little more. I noticed when I was setting up here those very interesting shadows on that building over there with the different colors. That kind of caught my attention. That's all we're doing, is trying to see more. I think it was Barnaby Spring in his essay, nice essay in this book here. He said mindfulness doesn't cure things or change things in its essence. It's just about being aware. And then you can decide if you want to change something or fix something. But fundamentally, it's about being aware. Okay. So deep looking, a couple reasons to develop deep looking in our students. To develop presence, to develop that presence which we've talked about. To reduce anxiety. Okay, I'm a person that has some social anxiety, have had for my whole life, but when you are present in the moment and you're not caught up in your thoughts, your worries, you can reduce that anxiety. Okay? My friend Chris Willard said, one of the other purposes of mindfulness is to see the good, the beautiful, and to avoid the bad, to avoid danger, to avoid problems. If I'm not mindful, I might say something that's going to get me in a lot of trouble and maybe hurt somebody. As a classroom teacher, I made the intention every morning to be mindful of my speech. Every single morning. Thich Nhat Hanh has a great mantra about mindful speech, which it helped me a million times. It didn't always work, right? We're human beings. Deep looking. All right. We do have to keep moving along. This is our first image, and I'm going to, Quinn, let's see, I think I can just close this curtain a little bit. Can you grab that? Thank you. I hate to remove our sunshine, but yeah, just a little bit for the next few minutes. So we're going to do a couple deep-looking exercises. Before we do that, thank you guys, that's perfect. I meant to share just a few practices with you that don't require a projector, posters, etc., that you can do anywhere at any time. And one of those is to just notice three things. Any environment you walk into, just notice three things. Okay, rather than immediately maybe talk to someone or pull out your phone, just pause and notice what's happening in this environment. So let's take a moment just to look around anywhere, and you can even just describe to yourself. I see a black bag here with a strap on it. Oh, that's kind of interesting. I see a very interesting magenta colored kind of a drinking mug back there. Simple, right? I noticed that he's got an iPad on a tripod in the back. That's Quinn, by the way. Quinn, thanks for helping us out today. Okay? Simple. Have your students look for 3 things. Use some words to describe. Slow it down. And if you work with young kids like I did, you know they are rarely aware of their environment. Rarely. I see some heads nodding. Okay, another exercise is to pick out a color. Ask students to just look for a certain color. That never failed to get kids so jazzed. I would say to myself, wow, I mean, just ask them to find the color yellow. Their heads would start immediately looking around the room, and then I'd say, well, let's share out. And I would get 20, 30. I was in an art room, so there was always a lot of colors. 20, 30 examples of, oh, I saw, they were so excited to share what they saw. Okay, look for a color, very simple. We would go on walks in the hallway. I called them, one was a line walk, L-I-N-E, where we would walk through the halls looking at different lines. Geometric lines, straight lines, curved lines. Okay, this is an art class, so we're studying the element of line. You look at this room right here. What is the primary shape of the lines in this room?
Straight.
Straight, yeah, geometric, right? Geometric. Go for a line walk, nice and slow. Another one, we did a shape walk. Look for different shapes, organic shapes, geometric shapes. Again, this room is primarily geometric shapes, circles. It's another way to be aware of your environment. I asked my 8th graders to be aware of light and shadow during our unit on drawing. If you look around this room right now, you could notice the different light sources. We had the gorgeous light coming in through the window. We have the artificial light above us. We have reflecting light off of your objects. But also look at the shadows. Look at the way shadows are hitting things. Soft shadows. Shadows with hard edges. Any art teachers are similar? Okay. You don't have to be an art teacher to notice those things, right? Simple ways to practice deep looking. Okay? I am going to keep pressing on because I know our time is very short today, so I apologize. Those are actually very fun once you start using those. This is an image I showed many years by Vincent van Gogh called A Pair of Old Shoes. I'm just going to give you a minute or so to look at this image. And if your mind wanders, carefully bring it back to the image. Now, maybe some of you have heard of the slow art movement or the slow looking movement. Maybe you've heard of that. There are art students, especially in high school, college, who are looking at images for hours at a time. I wouldn't try that with middle school kids. One professor has their students look at the same image like once a week and then write about how their perception of that image changes over time. So there's lots of permutations of this activity. What do you notice? Let's start co-creating. What do you notice about this image? Simple, right? Anybody? What do you know? Just anything at all. Don't be, yeah.
I was just curious about the lines to the right of the shoe. That's either looking at maybe a shadow, but it also kind of looks like it's movement.
Nice. Thank you. Your name?
Maria.
You know, I've been looking at this slide for many years. I don't think I fully saw that before.
That's exactly
So
what
thank
I
you.
thought.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why the shoe on the left isn't worn as smoothly as the shoe on the right is worn.
Nice. Interesting. I don't think I've noticed that either. So thank you. Very nice. Yeah.
I was just thinking based on the lines and the sense of movement that you have,
Yeah.
but the perspective makes like for a very unstable view, it seems that it's almost like flying there. So,
Interesting.
and it doesn't look like it's taking it from the top. It
Yeah.
actually looks like it's, I don't know how to explain myself,
Yeah.
but it looks
Yeah.
like it's being so forced
Yes.
that they're about to slide down.
Very nice. I've never had someone notice that before. It looks like it's almost like they're sliding off a table.
Yeah.
I've never noticed that, but very nicely done. Yeah, thank you. What else?
So if you look at the shoes, the shape of the shoe on the left and the shape of the shoe on the right, they almost look like two left shoes.
Yes. Isn't that interesting?
So
You have to look,
That's what I got.
Dan, you have to look very closely to see that. So way to go. Way to go. Anything else? Yeah.
So I noticed something in myself as I was looking at this. I was noticing my eye movement because of all of the lines. My eyes were jumping to different parts of the paint. It's a painting?
Yes, it is a painting.
Yeah,
Oh, I
of the
can-
paint,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Of the
Very
painting.
interesting. So some of you have noticed your response, not maybe just your thought, but maybe how it made you feel. And that's the other piece, which we don't have time to get into much, but you can ask kids or yourself, keep 10% of your attention on your reaction. What are you noticing here? Because you can show some images that are very provocative, depending on the age group. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, to notice what you're feeling. I think you mentioned it a little bit, the instability. This is deep stuff. That's deep looking. Now, if people were scrolling through their phone, this come up, maybe they'd give it a half a second, right? I mean, that's what we do. But here we're stopping. We're stopping and looking. I could go on for a long time about this one. Those were excellent comments. The one thing I asked my students, I used to say, so what color would you use if you were going to, if I told you to paint this? What color? Well, brown. You know, brown for shoes. Really? Where's the brown? You were going to, did you want to share something?
I just noticed, and I hadn't noticed this until I did take an art class, it looks like brown, but there are so many different colors happening to make those colors.
Exactly.
And I didn't realize that, so I had to do it, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Every
Yes.
color is here. It looks
Exactly.
like it's just green or white,
Right.
but there's.
And that's a thank you. That is a fundamental insight into the way we think. Oh, those are brown shoes. Oh, I'm a portrait artist, so I'd say to the kids, well, if I was doing, this person's portrait, do I just get white paint on? And, she's a white person, I just get white paint on. No. No. You had a hand up over here. Did you?
Oh, my glasses are new, so I was looking
Yeah.
to see what it looked like. without me.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So anyway, you can get into a big discussion about how, just like mindfulness, when you really look, whether it's an image or a still life, you're going to see a lot more than your first thought. Oh, brown shoes on an old floor. You're going to see subtlety, nuance. And I tried to get my kids to that nuance level. Nuance, right? All right, I'm going to move on just because our time is short. So thank you for those. Wow, we could spend the whole hour just on one. Okay, so I'm going to just briefly stop here. Looking at art enhances all of these things here. Deep looking, non-judgment. We start out by just looking, right? I'm going to quote my students, and I apologize. That sucks, or that's awesome, and then they want to move on. No, we're just going to really look. Meaning making. Humans are meaning making machines. We'll talk more about that. It enhances multiple perspectives. All of you gave a different perspective that shared a minute ago. That's what I loved about teaching art and humanities. Okay? Listening, dialogue, careful thinking, the study of culture and history. Oh my gosh, that's teaching patience and fun. We're going to stick with an image more than 1 second. All right. The next image I'm going to show you is sort of our key image for this very brief workshop. I hope I'm not going too fast, but we only have about 20 minutes left. I'm going to ask you two things to do with the next image. First is just to look. Just to look, and then I'll give you the next direction in a moment. Okay, I think it's dark enough in here. Pretty good size. This is an image by Winslow Homer, painted in 1899, called The Gulf Stream. I'm just going to give you, let's give you about 2 minutes to just look at that very carefully. you might notice what you're thinking, you're feeling, what thoughts are going through your mind. Step number 2 for this image, if you have something to write on, I'm going to ask you to just write for a couple minutes about this image. You can just write anything in the bulletin, or if someone needs an extra pencil, I've got some.
What's the title of it again?
It's called The Gulf Stream, Gulf, the Gulf Stream. Yep. And when I say write, please write whatever you want. What came to mind for you about this image or about your reaction? Okay? Another minute or so. We have some writers in this group. I originally thought we would do a turn and talk. We are, again, running short of time, so I think what I would like to do is just, if there's a few people that would like to share out, this is an awesome activity to do in pairs or triads, whatever your formation, but anybody like to share? Yeah, just some of your impressions here.
Well, my overall impression is that this is just such a very dangerous moment in this man's life. But what astounds me and strikes me is that he appears almost calm, not even paying attention to the swarming sharks and the funnel cloud behind him and the tipping boat. He's looking off to the side in such a calm way, and this is truly what I strive for in my churning life. Hence being late, and so that is what I am working on. Bless his heart.
Very interesting. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
I'll just read what I wrote. Tightness in chest, ship in distance, is it coming or going? Subject looks pretty chill. Acceptance of what is, maybe this is a better fate. Curiosity, how did he get there? Slavery, whoosh in the distance, that really sucks. Compassion, ancestral trauma, and systemic whiteness.
Oh my gosh. I think you've got a week-long lesson plan there, or a book. Thank you.
Yeah,
Is it Stacy?
sure. Yeah, and I was here yesterday, so I listened to the talk on systemic whiteness. It wasn't just like, oh, you know, so it was very fresh. And,
So those
yeah.
thoughts are kind of swirling.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Yes.
For me, kind of piggybacking off of what was just said, it was the way that like the waters are higher around the boat,
Yeah.
yet no matter what's happening around him, he's still like going steady and in a calming motion.
Nice, thank you, yeah.
My first thought was, it was a visual to me of how a lot of my male students, when I first get them versus when they graduate, how when they first come to me, they're all over the place. They would have been panicking right there. There would have been a lot of panic. But by the time we get to graduation, that's the calmness and the stillness, because it's still a lot of trauma around them. However, they've kind of found a common ground place or some mindfulness to where they can actually work through it and still succeed.
Beautiful.
So that's kind of a visual of my daily life with my students.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you notice how many folks are turning this into a metaphor for something about their life? I did not tell you to do that. I said just right.
It's funny that I didn't see that. I actually saw that something that he's been fighting, a very bad situation. There's like blood stains all over,
Yeah.
so I feel
Yeah.
that maybe there were more people that died. That says over, and I saw him as exhausted.
Yeah.
So I thought he was done. It's like, whatever happens to me will happen at this point. I've tried my best. There's no way there is a ship that I'm not even paying attention to me.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm just going to lay down here and just see what God will send.
He's given up.
He's given up.
He's letting go. He's truly let go. Whatever happens.
But by physical exhaustion at this point.
Exhaustion.
The way I see it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
On a similar note, I wondered if you'd taken out that shark that's next to the boat, that's kind of on its side. That seems like an unnatural pose.
Interesting. Maybe he had a battle. You could
Yeah.
have students write, what happened before this moment? What happened there, right? I actually had some students say, well, what about compassion for those sharks? I mean, they're just trying to live, right? I thought, well, I never thought of that. They're trying to live.
Super interesting, like everybody's mentioned kind of the commotion, but the boat and the man are so still. And the sharks, they have pained expressions.
Yeah, they do.
And so, just, I've written down, who has the power?
Well, so your first name?
Rebecca.
Yeah, so Rebecca, so power would be an interesting theme to write about too. Where's the power here? Is it the power of nature?
Yeah.
And how much power does he have at all, if any? Go ahead, Dan.
I just wrote 6 words.
Yeah.
First word that came to mind was survival,
Mm.
and then isolation, and then danger,
Mm-hmm.
and then hopelessness,
Mm.
and then I saw perseverance
Mm.
and anticipation.
Nice. What's he anticipating, Dan? Because I agree, that does look a little like what is he anticipating?
They're just in a sense of anticipation. I don't think it's a known anticipation. Obviously, the sharks, okay? That anticipation of having to, face death, But
We don't know for sure.
I don't know what the anticipation might be. Maybe he's looking back at the ship coming to rescue him.
Yeah. Yeah, and now, okay, embarrassing, I didn't notice this for about 10 years. And the student said, there's a ship, did you see?
I said, I was looking at that, and then I know Jane said, oh, water spout. And then I was like, well, wait, what's the story here? Is that a water spout in weather, or is that clouds?
Yeah.
In the back, is that a ship? Is there possible rescue?
Right.
I was thinking the same.
Go?
And then I'm like, the story could
Yeah,
change and be shifted,
So that you could just have students just write a story about, tell us the story. Yeah.
I want to say one thing because it just shows where we're at in society.
Yeah.
I totally was laughing at myself and didn't say this, but it looks like he's got earbuds in because
Yeah.
either way, I'm calling out. He's like rocking out to his music. Like,
Which is exactly. So you're saying Apple should use this in one of their.
I'm trying to get into the image, and I'm like, I wonder what he's listening to.
I might as well put on my playlist as long as I'm going down.
What
Yeah.
other people have said though, we may not know the storm and we may think it's the wrong storm.
Yeah.
Because I saw him as the only passenger, but then what you said, I was like, oh, well, that's a bigger storm than what I think. And then in your interactions with people, you just may not think the storm.
Yeah. And part of this gets to the thought that we can make a lot of guesses about what's happening here. But the important point is to just recognize those as stories and guesses. We don't know for sure, right? In mindfulness, we talk about not knowing for sure. There's an acronym, TUM, theory of mind, where psychologists tell us that we try to make guesses about people's motivations and what's going on in their mind. I don't know what's happening in Jane. Maybe she's looking at me with a scowl. I'm trying to. Well, have I offended? We don't know. We often don't know what's happening in people's lives. We don't know what's. Is he just chilling? Is he in despair? Is he giving up? Is he? I showed this at a Catholic school one time, and a person said, "Well, he's seeing Jesus over here. He's seeing his Savior coming to." Right? I mean, we are meaning-making machines, and as a teacher, that was the funnest thing. I never got tired in 30 years of putting an image up and just, let's make some meaning, let's tell some stories about this. Kids love it. Yeah?
One of the things that I heard yesterday that is very apparent here too is that with mindfulness we have to be okay with not having closure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that uncomfortability of not really knowing, and that's what kind of spurred that comment, is just knowing that we don't really know,
yeah.
And there's not really closure, there's not a definite answer,
yeah.
But it's the gaining of the comfortability and the peace with that that's most important.
Comfortable with ambiguity, not knowing, very nice. Yeah, when I was a teenager, young man, I had to be certain about some things, and I've had them for years, and I finally had to learn to let go. We just don't know some things. We just don't know. For those of you that like, maybe a little more detail, some historians think that these are some symbols here. This is like an open grave, or a coffin shape here. This mast is broken. There seems to be a black cross here. So some people think there's some symbols of his death or the end of his life. These. This here is like maybe a shroud that they used to wrap. So you could go and you can research this one. Another interesting here. I think we do have to wrap up, but your comments were so fascinating. I love this quote, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." Those waves, to me, we are all experiencing waves of stress. Everybody. Now, maybe Rebecca's waves, those waves in her life are very small. Maybe she just forgot her lipstick or something this morning. Okay, you're going to live, right? I forgot my hair gel. I survived. But some of us have very significant waves in our lives. I do. And I'm sure you do. But they come and go. Those waves will crest and go. But what I love about this quote is those stressors, those waves, build character and strength. And I'm sure everybody in this room has been through some very significant stressors that I would never know about. Right?
How long do you have? No, just kidding.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. I'm just going to check we are almost out of time. So I want to wrap up. I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff. Another way to look at that slide is that man is developing patience in the face of a horrific experience. Now, I was a middle school teacher. I won't say it was quite as horrific as that guy on the boat, but it was stressful. Right? Can I get an amen? Any middle school teachers in here? All right, hugs after, right? Okay, no. But I made this print, and I used this phrase that I learned with Mindful Schools, and that became my mantra for a long time. And I used to say that to myself over and over and over as I was standing in front of a class, ready to reach out and, so. I have a copy of this for you that I'm going to let you take away today. And so if anybody wants to eventually contact me, that's my Gmail. I'm also a board member for the Mindfulness and Education Network, which is on the East Coast. And if you don't pick up this book this weekend, please make sure you think about picking that up, because there's a lot of awesome stories in that book. So I'm going to pass these out. Quinn, thanks for your help today. Guys, you were awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah.